This is what you missed last week on
A casual review.
It was great. It was all about me. Sort of the hero's journey.
When I started playing Final Fantasy XIV about a year ago, I didn't really know what to expect. I had been told that the story was an amazing and emotional roller coaster, and that the raids and trials and dungeons got better and better as you progressed through the game, but Final Fantasy XIV failed to capture my attention. Actually, more specifically, A Realm Reborn failed to keep me. Eventually, I got my Dragoon to level 52, watched the credits roll on the main ARR story, and even escorted some random flying cat thingy into a dangerous wooded area. But overall, the game lost me. It was a chore to get through the first 52 levels, and from then on, I just assumed that Final Fantasy XIV was not the game for me. Until now. Recently, I picked the game back up, and if you watched episode 1, you'll know that the game offered me a second chance. When I came back, I started my journey all over again. I opened my eyes to the possibility of Final Fantasy XIV as a world to explore and enjoy my own way. I tried to focus less on rushing to the endgame to get to hardcore content, which is how I play other MMOs. But while my efforts to change my ways were commendable, it was actually the game that showed me that I could be rewarded for slowing down. That the best content was not hidden behind hours of progression, but was instead blocked by my own impatience. And now, I'm feeling the love for this game that so many others have. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to A Casual Review, a series where I test and review popular games so you can decide if you want to try them out. In this video, we'll be taking a second look at Final Fantasy XIV and how the end of the base game, A Realm Reborn, presents itself to new players. This is our second stop on our journey to review the entire game, so if you haven't seen the first video, I'll leave a link down in the description. This episode will mostly cover dungeons, trials, raids, and some of the quests leading up to and directly following the 2.0 credits. I'll try to be spoiler sensitive, but in order to discuss some of the topics, I will need to show some of the footage, but I'll make sure to edit out any of the major story points. To give you a taste of what you're about to hear, the dungeons, trials, and raids are some of the best content that I've experienced in the game so far, and for those of you who have played through this before, I've now met Hildebrand. Before we start, I want to thank you all for leaving so many nice comments on the last video. I hope this video proves to be a worthy sequel to the first. I appreciate your support more than you know. The best advice comes from those who came before you, right? That's like a popular saying somewhere, probably on a discount t-shirt at Walmart or something. So I thought it would be fun to dive into the comments section of my first impressions video and talk about a couple of the most common pieces of advice you all gave me. First up, the inventory space. So in my last video, I made this huge deal about how I felt the armory chest and inventory was near infinite because I had not even come close to filling up my bags. I was like, oh man, how great is it to have an MMO where bag space is infinite? We should never have to worry about that in MMOs. And then I got told in like 40 different ways that actually the complete opposite is true. According to a number of your comments, the armory chest and inventory actually fills up rather quickly once you start to get further into the game and level up multiple classes and professions. Makes it really important to hire a retainer. So far, I haven't found out where to unlock that, but I haven't run into inventory issues yet. I can see how it will start to happen though, so I am looking out for it. The second most popular comment was about leveling alternate jobs. Seems like the best way to level a second job is to utilize the hunting log. When I first went through the game, I sort of glossed over this feature. I didn't even realize that completing a hunting log entry gave you XP. I also found out a bit more about the catch-up mechanic for leveling other jobs. It's called the Armory bonus, and it basically gives you XP based on how high level your main job is. So having the hunting log and Armory bonus together can level you up fairly quickly. I can't even begin to tell you how alt-friendly this is, and I'm thoroughly impressed that Final Fantasy XIV thought this much about leveling other jobs. That's definitely not a prominent feature in other MMOs. Alright, and last but not least, I picked this comment because this viewer reminded me to talk about the most important part of the game, the music. Not only does the music perfectly capture the sound of adventure, but for the most part, they are telling a story right alongside the locations they play in. The major cities and lower level areas in A Realm Reborn usually have some version of an uplifting melody that makes you feel like you are a newer, naive adventurer that is excited to go out into the world and prove yourself. Then you get to more desolate areas later on, and the music has a bit more danger or wonder to it. The chocobo music that I have yet to turn off plays every single time you get on your mount. And you know what? It sounds exactly like a musical narration of a bunch of chocobos running across an open field. And don't get me started on the battle music. Oh my lord, the battle music is amazing. When you get into an encounter in the open world, you get some high intensity music playing, some nice heavy guitar that's making the battle seem way more high octane than it probably is, but it fits so perfectly. And then when you start getting into trials, the game takes it up a notch and pushes for a higher intensity of music, and then you think, no, they can't get even more intense. And then you fight the ultimate weapon and are blasted in the eardrums with the sweet sounds of a battle song that sounds like an army of angry angels making love inside your headphones. Suffice to say, I'm a fan of the music. As I kept playing and progressing through the game, I realized something pretty quickly. Even though the combat was still pretty slow, I was starting to enjoy the dungeons and trials a lot more. I took a second to think about why exactly this was, and I came to the conclusion that as you get to higher levels, the encounters start to throw more mechanics at you. It seems super simple when I say it like that, but let me explain. Most of the time, when you are completing quests or fighting monsters, combat follows a similar format. The enemy rushes you, does a bit of an auto attack damage, and then throws some sort of easily dodged area attack. This formula for the open world doesn't deviate too much even as you get further into the game, but where it does change is within instance content. Dungeons and trials started to get much more enjoyable, with minor mechanics being thrown in to make the encounters seem more intense than they really are. What I realized is that because you don't really have to worry about performing your skills, the encounters are able to throw more mechanics your way. Dodge this, DPS, kill this, tanks, make sure to use your damage reduction, healers, there's a big party-wide damage mechanic coming soon. From there, it's super easy for the game to throw any number of mechanics at you to raise difficulty. Players are being taught how to identify and complete mechanics so they can enjoy raids later on and not feel blindsided by the difficulty. I know I'm only at the very beginning of all this, so it's not that any of this was actually difficult, but I realized that as a tank, it was super easy to learn the mechanics of any new fights because all the mechanics were telegraphed in the same way. For example, the soak mechanic has a huge indicator with arrows pointing to the soak area. Most fights had an orange AoE marker that you would need to dodge. For me, as a tank, it was super easy to learn how to pick up ads, point the boss away from your party, which translated extremely well once I got into extreme trials and the raids. As more skills are added to your character's repertoire and the game adds more mechanics, the difficulty raises. But having the base information taught to you through progressively difficult gameplay is like a long, interesting tutorial, building you up so that when you get to the new and most difficult content, you actually feel ready. There's a few encounters I want to call out specifically that I absolutely loved. These fights made me actually smile while I was in the middle of trying to complete them. And I don't smile, I'm a very serious person. Spoiler alert, from here to the end of the video, I'll be calling out some of the specific encounters and quests that may give you a hint as to major story points. So if you haven't played ARR all the way through and are interested in playing through the story on your own, I would click away now. For those of you left, let me tell you a little story. When I played Final Fantasy XIV with my Dragoon, I played until the first credit roll, so I played through some of these encounters already, but I pretty much stopped after that. Now I came back with my Gladiator, and I was met with the changes made in patch 6.1. They reworked all the fights against the Imperial Legion, and they are so much better now. Let me start with the Riditin? I don't know, Mr. Shield Arms fight. I believe originally this was a full party 8-player fight. I remember on my Dragoon it was a clusterfuck because he died so fast and went through his mechanics so quickly that I didn't have any time to figure out what was going on and what I was supposed to do. Final Fantasy XIV changed this to be a single-player trial. Holy hell, was it way more fun. It was a slap-to-the-face wake-up call. Not only was it something new that had mechanics and required me to be fully engaged for the entirety of the fight, but it was actually the first time where I didn't complete the mechanics right and I actually died. This was probably the first moment in the entire game where I had to sit up in my chair and actually focus. Next was a fight with Livia. Originally, this was a full raid, I believe, and it took forever to complete. I remember having to do this long battle with her and transport ammo to refill cannons, but now it was just a 4-person party. I actually did it with a party of NPCs just to try it out. The battle was so much more intense and it felt a little faster, but that could just be because of how much was going on. The Nero fight was with a 4-person party as well, and it was super fun, but the best part was the Ultima and the La Habrea fight. The Ultima fight was separated into its own instance, so now you can queue for it on its own. This was the first fight that made me awkwardly smile through the entire encounter. The Angry Angel Army music was blaring in my headphones, the mechanics required my full attention, and it was just difficult enough to get my heart beating a little faster. Then, the La Habrea fight, which was the perfect ending to the gauntlet of boss battles that I'd just run through. Not only were these battles riddled with fun mechanics and gameplay, but it all tied into an engaging storyline, culminating with a one-on-one battle against La Habrea, where you basically go Super Saiyan and use the power of Heidelin to bring him down. After the credits rolled, I remembered one of the comments on the last video telling me to take some time and complete some of the blue quests to unlock the raids and trials and some extra content. I had already unlocked some dungeons as I was leveling, so I was used to the concept, but one thing was for sure, I was not expecting what I unlocked with these quests. First, the Crystal Tower. The first Alliance raid that I had been a part of with my Gladiator. When I unlocked the first piece of it, I was actually pretty nervous. I didn't really know what kind of difficulty to expect. As a tank, at least in World of Warcraft, you can really fuck up an entire raid if you don't perform, so I wasn't entirely confident to do a raid blind. For the first run through, I was a bit lost, but this is where the game really shines. The mechanics were practically the same as ones I've encountered in the past. They were at least telegraphed the same way. So I ended up completing the set of 3 raids no problem. The raid wiped a couple times, but I don't think it was my fault, hopefully. It wasn't anything that I couldn't learn on the fly, and most of the time I was the off-tank anyway. But this sort of light difficulty means that I can experience the story, which is the focal point of the game, and have some semi-challenging gameplay to make it epic. Then we kick it up a gear. Extreme Trials. This may seem like an exaggeration, but even at this reduced difficulty, these extreme trials with the 3 primals were possibly the most fun I've had in an MMO since I raided in World of Warcraft 2.5 years ago. These trials are kind of difficult. Not as difficult as I'm sure the current extreme trials are, but just hard enough that if you don't perform a mechanic, it's hard to recover and complete the encounter. These are 8-player battles, so I had much more responsibility as a tank. The Garuda battle was the first one I unlocked, and the mechanics made things seem pretty hectic, with multiple feathers blowing around, positioning the boss and yourself so you don't get blasted by the wind attacks. Having enough DPS means you could cheese a bit of the encounter, but it was a great introduction to higher level gameplay. I eventually got to Ifrit, and this was my favorite encounter in the entire game so far. It took my party 5 tries to get Ifrit down, and it made me feel so good about my skill and how far I've come in learning how to be a good tank. Normally on this battle, you need a tank swap because you are constantly gaining damage stacks that increase the amount of damage you are taking, making it harder to heal you and thus harder to stay alive. So usually you swap at 3 to 4 stacks. There were multiple points where my partner tank got pulled away and didn't tank swap until I got 5 stacks or more, and between the awesome healer and popping all my damage reduction abilities, I was able to stay up until the tank came over to take aggro. All of these battles, from the dungeons to the raids to the extreme trials, made me feel like I was succeeding at learning, like I was performing at a higher level, and I can't wait to get into the newer expansions and try more of these encounters and see just how good at this game I can be. This is extremely important in my overall Final Fantasy XIV experience because there is so much to enjoy about the game. My only problem with it originally was how slow the encounters felt. It's my style of playing games. I love good combat, and it's the first thing I look for when I try something new. To me, if combat is good, then the rest of the game sort of falls around it. Story plays better because combat encounters make the story points exciting. Classes are more fun to experiment with because the combat for those classes can be engaging and fun. If Final Fantasy XIV encounters start getting to be this good, what am I going to have to actually complain about? So far, just one thing to complain about. Even though the story picks up big time with more dungeons and encounters and big moments, I'm still not too much of a fan of the majority of the questing. It's getting better, but so far there's still a huge amount of talking quests. I get it, the story is the focus and I really like the story, but I'm finding that while I'm questing, there'll be periods of maybe 15 minutes or so before I'm taking any other action than just speaking to the next person. Of course, I can get through this by queuing up for dungeons and trials on the side, but my skip text finger is getting real close to going off during long conversations. The only caveat to this is a post-ARR credits quest that I randomly ran into, the Hildebrand questline. It's a blue quest marker and I originally figured it would unlock something, so I went along with it. This quest, I guess, is really an entire saga of stories that involve this detective Hildebrand and the hijinks that he gets into as he tries to solve a case. From there, you follow Hildebrand and his assistant around, solving cases and fighting in fun battles on their behalf. And then this dude shows up and I immediately went, what the fuck? Like uncontrollably out loud with my girlfriend in the room, and she asked what I was playing and I didn't know what to say. But also, I didn't want to stop the questline. I kept going. It was weird and funny and the animations were hilarious. Like, it's not Shakespeare, but its humor definitely caught me off guard and kept me interested all the way until now. I think I've spent a total of 3 hours just on the Hildebrand questline and it's not done, so I'll report back when I finally get to the end. Didn't want to hold up the entire video just so I could complete 4 more hours of this, but man, what a gem of a questline. I think the best part about this is that you can tell that it was just something random and stupid and fun that the developers wanted to put into the game, and they put a lot of time and effort into it too. It's not like some random 10-minute quest as a little joke. This is an entire series of quests with multiple trials and some A+ animations. This kind of stuff is what makes the game feel like a truly loved piece of art. And I've been thoroughly enjoying this piece of art. So much so that I actually refused being carried through content. That's right, you heard me. I had an easy button in front of me and I refused to push it. I had a one-way ticket past some progression content and I ripped that ticket up and chose to walk. This was right after I had finished the Garuda Extreme Trial and I had unlocked the Titan fight. I had also unlocked the Coils of Bahamut and got to a point in the Hildebrand questline that I needed to fight some weird octopus monster in a tournament ring. I was AFK in a city and I randomly got poked and whispered at by some child, asking if I needed help with any trials or dungeons. I got back to my desk just in time to tell him that I was in a queue for a couple of trials and he offered to run me through them. Now I actually said yes at first. I had been in a queue for the Coils of Bahamut raid for about an hour and a half before giving up and trying something else. Off we went, after his partner joined, and almost immediately did I realize the mistake I made. We didn't go to the Coils of Bahamut at first. We went to the Titan Extreme trial. What had taken me 30 minutes to learn and take down Extreme Garuda, the best fight I had experienced at that point, took less than a minute unsynced. Then we went into another trial to beat Odin, defeated in even less time. Then we defeated the Octopus in less than 10 seconds, and then on to Coils. I watched the cutscenes, so I didn't even see the battles. It all happened so fast that I didn't have enough time to think, you know what, I bet all of this would have been super fun to finish on my own for the first time. So I told my new devil friends that I would join their link shell, which I guess is like a mini chat server, and logged off for the night, hoping that tomorrow I'd be able to try more of the epic extreme battles on my own. So my advice? Never trust a Lalafell. I'm just kidding. Kind of. I appreciate that these two took the time out of their night to join me in running some content and teaching me some of the things the game won't tell you. Like, there is a link shell system, and that some duties you just can't use the duty finder for, or it'll take hours to find a group. I'm sure they were given rewards as mentors for helping us sprout, and I was given enough Allagan tombstones to purchase new gear and get my item level high enough to take on the last raid. So we both win in this situation. So if they happen to see this video, thank you very much for taking the time to join me in some content. Side note, I think it's extremely new player friendly to have raids and high-level trials give you currency to purchase high-level gear. It's a great way to keep players progressing in a way that makes them feel rewarded for completing content, but not stay stagnant for too long. Overall, I'm super impressed with how much this game thinks about new players and its older content. There's still a long road ahead of me, but with content that can actually make me smile, it doesn't seem that daunting. I can beat the old extreme trials. I can clear the old raids. I can listen to people talk for 15 minutes without fast forwarding. I will get to Endwalker. But most importantly, I hope you enjoyed the video. Leave a like if you liked it and subscribe for more content. I hope you enjoy the awesome boss battles like I do, and I can't wait to see what we talk about next.